Thank you guys for granting me this opportunity to be able to talk to you about something which I'm very passionate about. My name is Dr. Dieter. I hold board certifications in two fields, the fields of internal medicine and pediatrics. And I have become very, very passionate about metabolic health in the last 2 years. And I want to start with this statistic because I live in the United States. I want to concentrate on the statistics here. In the United States, they say 9 out of 10 people living in the United States right now have what we call metabolic dysfunction. That's a huge percentage. And it's important to define what metabolism is to understand what metabolic dysfunction is. Metabolism is the way the body takes food energy and converts that food energy into cellular energy. So if the body is not able to convert food energy into cellular energy, well, we say you have metabolic dysfunction. But another way in which you define metabolic dysfunction is the way the body makes and use energy. If the body is not able to make energy well or use energy well, we say you have metabolic dysfunction. And that has huge implications because there are 7 energy-dependent functions in the cell that require energy to function. These are some of the 7 energy-dependent functions. Makes proteins, repair and replicate DNA, cell signaling, what goes where, what to turn off when, transport of molecular material from one place to the other, homeostasis, which is maintenance of a normal, healthy operating environment, cleanup of waste and all chemical reactions. All of these things require energy. You see, things do not just happen in a vacuum. Every cell is supposed to pay for the activity it does by dispensing energy. And the energy that it requires, it's a molecule called ATP. When the body is not able to make energy or use energy well, like what we say metabolic dysfunction, then these 7 energy-dependent functions are not going to work. I want to single out one of those 7 energy-dependent functions. Repair, regulate, and replicate DNA. Point number 2. And explain to you how the impairment in that can lead to disease. We have from time to time we have spontaneous mutations in our DNA. Now, the body has systems that have been set into place to recognize that spontaneous mutation. After recognizing that spontaneous mutation, repair that spontaneous mutation so that it doesn't propagate into a cancer. The repair of that damaged DNA requires energy to be dispensed. When there isn't enough energy, to be able to repair that DNA that has been damaged, that damaged DNA goes unrepaired, it now propagates into a cancer. So a lot of people think that adult cancers are due to bad luck, but you'll be surprised that most of adult cancers are due to metabolic dysfunction, an energy imbalance that results in a system that is supposed to correct, damage, resulting in a failure of correction. Now, there is now reputable science out there that most of the chronic medical conditions that we face today are rooted in metabolic dysfunction. And that metabolic dysfunction comes from two things: insulin resistance and microbiome dysfunction. Those two things working in conjunction cause most of the chronic medical conditions that we face today. Now, it's important to understand, I want to take each of them singly, insulin resistance as well as microbiome dysfunction, and explain to us what these things are. Insulin is to understand what insulin resistance is important to understand what insulin does. Insulin is a very critical hormone in our existence. I call it hormone numero uno in terms of importante. It stands central, in terms of securing energy, in terms of our metabolism, how we make energy, how we use energy. So the job of insulin is this: to mobilize glucose into the cell. When we eat, right, all the food that we eat, after absorption occurs in the colon, After absorption occurs in the colon, glucose is released in the blood as a byproduct of the absorption. When glucose is released in the blood as a byproduct of absorption, the job of insulin now is to mobilize that glucose. So insulin, the job of insulin is to mobilize glucose from the blood into the cell, So mobilizes glucose from the blood into the cell. When glucose gets into the cell, glucose goes through a complex series of reactions called the electron transport chain, resulting in an energy molecule called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. This is an energy molecule. And so that's the job of insulin. So you could put it in simpler terms that the job of insulin is to secure energy, the energy requirements of the cell. So that's what insulin does. So what then is insulin resistance? Insulin resistance is when there is a breakdown in that process. If insulin is not able to cause, if there is a breakdown in this process right here, we say breakdown. If insulin is not able to cause the mobilization of glucose into the cell with the end result of securing ATP, we say you have insulin resistance. Now, I want to explain to us how we develop insulin resistance because you will see how this plays into the role of how to reverse it. It's important because in the mechanics of things, if you understand how a problem came to be, then it's easy for you to fix the problem. So, insulin resistance. How do we develop insulin resistance? We develop insulin resistance in a two-step fashion. The first step in developing insulin resistance is what I call chronic overnutrition. Chronic overnutrition. And that chronic overnutrition results in a cell that is filled with fat-laden cell. Okay, that's the first step in which we develop insulin resistance. Now, how does that happen? You see, there is now um, data out there that we're consuming about 20% more calories in this generation than our ancestors did a generation ago. And that is putting a metabolic workload on our cells that our cells do not need. So, what happens? How does chronic overnutrition result in insulin resistance? Let's say you have a cell, okay? You have a cell like this. Let's put this, each time we eat, right? All of the food that we eat is converted into glucose, and then there is a quarter of that food that is converted into fat. So let's say that I am a 70-kilogram man, and as a 70-kilogram man, I'm supposed to thrive on 3,000 calories a day or 3,000 calories. My body needs 3,000 calories. What happens is my body is going to take 2,500 of those calories and store them as glucose. And the other 500 calories, my body is going to store them as fat. My body is going to store them as fat. So it's important from every food that we take that the body stores glucose and the body stores fat because we shift our energies from burning glucose to burning fat. So when glucose levels are low, like when we are fasting at nighttime, the body has to switch from burning glucose to burning fat. So from every food that we eat, there is a quarter of fat that we're supposed to store. Now, the issue with fat is that fat is stored in dedicated fat stores in the body. You say fat stores, okay? Fat stores. And the
But is this supposed to be something on the board?
Oh, sorry, you cannot see.
It's white, yeah, just blank. I just wanted to make sure because let's see.
Hmm,
Going due to screen, yeah. It was.
something happened.
Uh, I see markers at the bottom in the eraser.
Okay, let's see.
Okay.
Let's see, 1 second. What screen do you guys see right now?
Just the whiteboard.
Okay, then something is wrong. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
We're going to edit this when I give this to you guys.
Okay.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to stop sharing my screen
Okay.
and reshare again and see whether that fixes the problem.
Okay. Should I see if it's something on my end?
No, 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 don't worry. I'll start.
Okay. Oh, tap screen mirror. Do I need to?
Okay, no, you don't need to do anything.
Oh,
I
there we
think
go.
the
Yep.
failure was on my end.
Okay. It's back.
Okay, all
Well,
right. So,
well.
okay, so
So,
where did we
okay. Fat stores.
Okay, the fat stores. Okay, wonderful. So let's do this. Okay. All right, wonderful. So what I was saying is the way you develop insulin resistance, is that our fat stores there is a designated amount of fat that goes into our fat stores. We're supposed to store fat from every food that we eat. These are the fat stores. The fat stores, for the purpose of this example, I'll say can only hold 500 calories of fat. Out of that, they cannot. These are designated areas in the body where fat is stored. So the way you develop insulin resistance from of chronic overnutrition is this. Let's say on this day, normally you're supposed to thrive on 3,000 calories, and today you consume 4,000 calories. So 3,500 of those calories are gonna go to glucose, and the other 500 calories are gonna be put in the fat stores, you know, are gonna go to fat. But now you have an excess of 1,000 calories, right? Those excess of 1,000 calories, the body converts those excess of 1,000 calories to fat. But the fat stores are full because the fat stores can only contain a certain amount of fat. So right now you now have 1,000 excess calories of fat that the body doesn't know what to do with it. The body now takes those 1,000 excess calories of fat. This is how a cell is normally supposed to look like. The body now takes that 1,000 calories of fat and goes stuffs it into this cell. Because the fat stores are full. The fat stores can only take a designated amount of fat. Now this cell is fat laden. This is a cell that was meant to respond to insulin when insulin comes knocking at the door. And now you have the cell and you have glucose in the blood, and then insulin comes to this cell and commands this cell, I want you to mobilize that glucose from the blood into the cell. You know what the cell tells insulin? The cell says, are you out of your mind? Am I not plump enough? Don't you think I'm full enough? I'm sorry, sir. I don't have any room in the inn. So the cell is so full. It's so full that it truly has no room to take in insulin, to take in glucose, and tells insulin, I'm sorry, I cannot take up glucose because I have no room in the inn. That's the first way in which you develop insulin resistance. A fat laden cell going to go cause crowding in the cell, the fat going to cause crowding in the cell, taking the place where glucose needs to be. And I like to describe this as, imagine yourself on Thanksgiving. Have you ever eaten too much on Thanksgiving? You are
Yeah.
so, you are so plumped full. And the last thing in your mind you're thinking of doing is to put in another piece of any food into your mouth. That's exactly how this cell is feeling. This cell is feeling stuffed, overfed with Thanksgiving food. And the last thing in its mind is to let glucose in. So it tells insulin, I am sorry. I have no room in the inn. Now, What happens then is the body kicks into gear what a compensatory mechanism. You see, the pancreas, and this is how we're now going into the second step of the way you develop insulin resistance. The pancreas now decides, okay, I now have this cell, that is not responding to insulin. And normally, let's say if the pancreas usually produced 5 units, let's say if initially this cell was like this normal cell was like this, and the pancreas usually produced 5 units of insulin, and this cell will be responsive to the 5 units. You now have this cell that is plump full with fat and not responding to insulin. Because it's not responding to insulin, the pancreas decides, okay, I am going to show this cell some force. I'm going to force it. I'm going to ramp up the production of insulin to force this cell to take up glucose. So instead of 5 units that this normal cell will normally have, the pancreas now deploys, 4 times the amount of insulin, maybe 20 units of insulin to this cell to force this cell to take up insulin. And what the pancreas is doing is trying to exert a forceful effect on the cell because this 5 units was not enough. It's just like there is an altercation in the neighborhood. The police send 5 cops. Those 5 cops are not able to deal with the altercation. In a show of force, the police department sends 20 cops. Those 20 cops go and quell the altercation. That's what happens here. The pancreas decides, okay, if this cell is going to be stubborn and not listen to my 5 units of insulin, I am going to show some force and bully this cell to comply. And so that's what it does. The other reason why this insulin is going up as 20 units as opposed to 5 units is accumulation of glucose in the cell. What do I mean by that? This cell that is not able to take up glucose causes glucose to accumulate in the blood. Okay, and the stimulus for insulin is glucose. When you have a high amount of glucose, the pancreas is going to produce a higher amount of insulin. So because this cell is fat laden and is not taking up glucose from the blood, what happens now is that glucose begins to accumulate in the blood. When glucose rises in the blood, the pancreas has to produce a commensurate high amount of insulin to deal with that glucose rise. And that's why the pancreas is showing that cell force, by saying, hey, 20 units deploy here to let this cell comply. Now, those 20 units of insulin, as I say, is acting like a bully. And every bully has its day. So for a while, and that may take 5 to 10 to 15 years, where the 20 units of insulin is bullying the cell, exerting a forceful effect on the cell, and keeping your blood sugars low. And that period of 5 to 10 to 15 years where you have high circulating levels of insulin, but a normal glucose is called the honeymoon period. And that's a period where people actually have subclinical diabetes and they don't know that they do.
That's pre-diabetic.
Say that again.
That be considered pre-diabetic.
That's not going to be even, that may be in the pre-diabetic range, yes, or subclinical diabetes. It could fall in that category, and some people are not even pre-diabetic with their sugars based on the labs because insulin is really driving the sugars down. I will call it subclinical diabetes because there is no lab test that shows that you have any signs of diabetes. The only thing is that your blood sugars are so high. That high blood sugars, sorry, your insulin levels are so high. The high insulin levels is what's driving your blood sugars low. So that's called the honeymoon period. In the honeymoon period can last from anywhere from 5 to 15 years. And during that period, that patient or that person actually has subclinical diabetes and doesn't know it. And what is happening is the bullying effect of insulin is keeping things at bay. But as you know it, guys, every bully has his day. A bully can never remain a bully can never have the same effect, from January to December. You know, if you have a bully on the playground, right? And when the bully appears on the playground, all the kids comply. The bully's pushing the kids around or what have you. There comes a day when the kids become sick and tired of the bullying. Like, enough, enough. I've had enough. You know, they stand up to the bully. And that's exactly what happens to the cell. The cell says, enough, enough. I've had enough of insulin bullying me to take up glucose when I'm so filled with fat. Enough is enough. I'm going to stand up to insulin. And this is how you now develop the second step of insulin resistance. The second step of insulin resistance is a pharmacokinetic condition called receptor downregulation. Receptor downregulation. Now, what is receptor downregulation? You see, on the surface of our cells are receptors. Okay. The receptors, I'm going to give you a little key here. The receptors act like the receptors act like the lock of the cell. Okay. Insulin has to bind. This little dot that I put here is insulin. So this is insulin. And these are the receptors. Insulin has to bind to the receptors right here for you to have a receptor insulin interaction. Lock and key. The receptor is the lock, insulin is the key. Okay. Insulin has to bind to the receptor to cause lock and key interaction. When there's a lock and key interaction, what now happens is that a door opens in the cell right here. A door opens in the cell right here after the lock and key interaction, and glucose now flows into the cell. So the cell realized, you know what? Insulin needs my lock. You know, insulin needs to put its key into my lock to be able to force me to take in glucose in the cell to open my door. So the cell decides, what if I take away some of my locks from the door? The key then becomes useless. So that's what receptor downregulation is. So if you have a cell here and the cell has, let's say, 6 receptors, those 6 receptors at the lock to the door. The cell becomes tired of the bullying over and over and over by insulin. It decides that, okay, I'm going to take 4 of my locks from the surface of the cell and translocate them into the cytoplasm. So you now have a situation where you have only 2 receptors on the surface of the cell and you have 6 receptors in. So you now have a situation where 2 people are carrying the load of 6 people as opposed to 6 carrying the load of 6. That is the second step of insulin resistance, what we call receptor downregulation, where the cell is protecting itself from the bully insulin. It says, I have had enough. And this is the time when those people who had been subclinical diabetic or their blood sugars had been normal, that's when they get a call from their doctor and say, hey, by the way, Carlos, you have diabetes. Their blood sugar gets high. I was talking to a doctor who told me that uh, he had a colleague of his who is a physician himself who said 2 years ago he went and checked with his doctor, did his physicals, and his blood pressures were totally fine, no issues at all. Sorry, his blood sugars were totally fine, no issues at all. He goes back 2 months 2 years later or a year later, you know, to the doctor, and the doctor tells him that his A1C was 11 point something. So he was in the honeymoon period, and a receptor downregulation occurred where he went from this stage to this stage, and now all of a sudden his blood sugars are high. So that's how the cell develops a thick skin to the bully insulin and stops and says, I have had enough. When you do not have any lock to put your key in, the key is useless. So there's less response. So the take home that I want to say here, and I say this with every seriousness, When you have a high amount of insulin, it pushes you to receptor downregulation. It causes, it causes the locks on the door. It causes the locks on the membrane of the cell to go to the cytoplasm. Receptor downregulation. When you have too much insulin, it's gonna cause receptor downregulation. Too much insulin circulating in the cell is not a good thing for the cell. It causes receptor downregulation. The other thing is that the opposite is true. When you have less insulin, a low insulin level, the reverse happens. It causes receptor upregulation. I'll explain that. Receptor upregulation. So it reverses insulin resistance. So if, let's say, you have a lower amount of circulating insulin and you initially had 4 receptors that had translocated to the cytoplasm of the cell, and your insulin levels in your blood are now low. Because of the low insulin levels in your blood, at any time insulin levels are low, that's like a bully that has become humble on the playground. When a bully becomes humble on the playground and say, I beg, the kids on the playground are now sympathetic. Like, okay, he's decided he's going to be humble. I can work with him. That's what happens exactly to the cell. When you now have a low circulating levels of insulin, it's dictating that low circulating levels of insulin. The cell no longer sees insulin as a bully, sees insulin as having a humble head and says, okay, I will work with you because you're no longer going to raise your voice on me. I'm going to take my 4 receptors that I had hidden from you, and I'm going to return those 4 receptors back to the surface of the cell. So you now go back to a situation where 6 receptors are doing the job of 6 receptors. You're restoring the status quo. So, point to be made: high circulating levels of insulin cause receptor downregulation. You have less locks on the door, and the key is useless. Low circulating levels of insulin causes a reversal, causes receptor upregulation, causes the locks on the door that had been removed to now be put back on the door. And I want to say this, I say this every time I give this presentation. Every patient who has diabetes and is on insulin will be diabetic for the rest of their life. Why? Because that exogenous insulin that you're injecting is contributing to excess insulin. When it contributes to excess insulin, you know what it does? It causes receptor downregulation. Any diabetic who is on insulin will be diabetic for the rest of their life because they are adding to circulating levels of insulin, making it high. The only way to no longer be diabetic is by the way that I show you here, breaking the cycle. So that's insulin resistance. I know we spent a little bit of time on there, and this is a picture that shows you some of the diseases that as a result of insulin resistance. And this list is not exhaustive. It's just that we cannot put a slide here that shows all the diseases in the world that are caused by insulin resistance. But the point to be made here is insulin resistance is at the heart of this. The other thing we talked about is the microbiome dysfunction. In our body, there are about 30 to 100 trillion bacteria that live in our large colon. Those 30 to 100 trillion bacteria that live in our large colon are called the microbiome. And the job of the microbiome is vast. This is what it does. It helps to break down food components like fiber, protects you from pathogenic bacteria, helps regulate the immune system. Did you know that about 70% of the body's immune system resides in the gut? 70%. When the gut is not healthy, it gives an unhealthy training to the immune system. The immune system can attack the body and you have autoimmune diseases. Other functions are it produces some very special short chain fatty acids that cause the strength and security of the gut. So you do not have a weak gut, so that bacteria doesn't leak out of your gut into your bloodstream. You don't have to be a neuroscientist to understand that the leakage of bacteria into your blood from your colon is bad. And the short chain fatty acids that are produced by the microbiome help to maintain the integrity, the strength, the security system of the gut so that bacteria don't break through from the colon into the gut. They also help to synthesize, vitamin B and vitamin K. Now, what is microbiome dysfunction, or what we call dysbiosis? It's just simply an imbalance in the microbial community where you have the good bacteria are overthrown and the bad bacteria proliferate. So you have an overpopulation of the bad bacteria and the good bacteria, shrink. So a disbalance. Normally they're supposed to be in equilibrium. But when you have too much bad bacteria and too little good bacteria, that's what we call dysbiosis, microbiome dysfunction. And when you have microbiome dysfunction, it can play into all of these diseases. These are some diseases, like I say, people think that colon cancer or maybe bad luck, but it's related to a poor gut. You have here things like coronary artery disease, inflammatory bowel disease, multiple sclerosis, type 2 diabetes, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth syndrome. All these diseases, lupus, Hashimoto's, asthma, even eczema. Again, the list is not exhaustive. And you can see at the bottom of the page, there is anxiety and depression. And you may be shocked to find anxiety and depression on this list. And guess what? About 90% of the body's serotonin, which is the neurotransmitter that secures our mood, is made in the gut. 90%. The remaining 10% is made in the central nervous system. So when the gut is unhealthy, it is not uncommon for you to have anxiety and depression. Everything is linked. Now, the next slide I want to show you here is a slide that I call the metabolic sequence of disease. And I'm going to explain it like this. So, and it starts with insulin resistance. We've defined what insulin resistance is. Now, when you have insulin resistance, it causes energy imbalance, right? What we call metabolic dysfunction. Insulin resistance resulting in energy imbalance, metabolic dysfunction. When you have metabolic dysfunction, the cell cannot make energy well or use energy well. It's going to result in what we call injury to the cell. Free radicals are going to be made. Those free radicals are going to cause injury to the cell. A cell that cannot make energy well or use energy well does two things. It produces noises that it's not supposed to produce. It produces byproducts that it's not supposed to produce. It's just like a car that is not working well. It makes noises that it's not supposed to make, produces fumes or liquids that it's not supposed to. Same with the cell. So one of the things a cell produces that is not supposed to produce is free radicals. Those free radicals now go and damage the cell. The free radicals here, these blue dots here, they go and cause damage to the cell. The damage to the cell causes the cell to cry out to the immune system. So metabolic dysfunction results in oxidative injury and damage to the cell. The immune system, the damage to the cell now causes the cell to cry to the immune system, help, help, I need help. The immune system hears the cry of the cell, and when the immune system hears the cry of the cell, the immune system deploys an inflammatory response to the cell. But now, when the immune system deploys an inflammatory response to the cell, it gets to this cell, and what it doesn't know is that what is seen in this cell is actually smoke and not fire. So it deploys an inflammatory response to this cell to try to take away the problem, but it cannot solve the problem because the problem here is smoke. And the fire actually started two houses away at insulin resistance, led to metabolic dysfunction before it triggered into the cell. So the immune system is not really able to solve the problem after deploying an inflammatory response, an appropriate inflammatory response. Now, When you have an inflammatory response, there's usually bystander injury. When you have a failed inflammatory response, which does not resolve the issue, it causes the cell to make another cry to the immune system. Oh, that issue has not been resolved. Come back again. The immune system hears that cry. The immune system goes back to the cell and deploys another inflammatory response. But again, the problem is two houses away at insulin resistance. The problem that the immune system is encountering here is seeing smoke, it's not seeing fire. So you have a situation where inflammation is begetting inflammation, immune response is followed by another immune response, and the core of the problem, the metabolic dysfunction and insulin resistance, are not being addressed. And that chronic repeated cycle of inflammation then leads to the disease condition. But the news is good. Why is the news good? Because science has now shown that if you reverse the core of the problem, you reverse the insulin resistance, you reverse the dysbiosis, then the symptoms of the diseases, those diseases which were as a result of the dysbiosis, those diseases which were as a result of the insulin resistance, because you reverse them, the disease goes away. And I usually like to explain it like this. If you are walking on the road, it's not walking on the road. If you're driving on the road and you have a car, and your car runs out of gas on the road, that car stops. The car has stopped not because there is intrinsic failure of the engine. The car has stopped because it doesn't have the energy source, gas, it needs for the engine to work. Same it is with the body. When the body has no energy, metabolic dysfunction, it results in these diseases like this. When you restore, if you walk to a nearest gas station, you pump gas in a jug, you buy a jug, pump gas in it, walk back to your car in the middle of the road, walk back to your car on the road, and you put gas in that tank. When you go back and sit in the driver's seat, right, and you turn on the ignition, what's gonna happen? After you pump gas into the car roars back to life again. It roars back to life again because it did not have intrinsic failure of the engine. It just had an energy deficiency. So it is with the body. Reversal of the insulin resistance and dysbiosis results in reversal of the disease condition. And so I have a bold statement to make, a very bold statement to make, that if I think I've had this is frozen again. There we go. I have a bold statement to make, that if you suffer from any chronic medical condition, it's the result of metabolic dysfunction. And if you reverse that metabolic dysfunction, you can reclaim your health again. It's that simple. That simple. And there's a solution. The solution is the Feel Great system, a nutraceutical product that combines the science of intermittent fasting and two products, to reverse insulin resistance, intermittent fasting and fiber to reverse insulin resistance and reverse dysbiosis. The two products in this system are a chlorogenic tea, and a fiber matrix. And the great thing about these two products is they are listed in the physician's desk reference. If you go to the physician's desk reference, you're going to see them listed in the physician desk reference. Talking about the Unimate, the Unimate has many benefits. It helps to promote satiety, supports cognition, helps in the I think I'm having a slowness in my screen here, guys. There we go. Promotes satiety, helps in fat burning, weight loss, and what have you. The important thing here, how this helps in reversal of insulin resistance, is it goes and reverses the two-step process of insulin resistance by securing lipolysis. Let me put it this way. The Unimate, all right, come on. All right, the Unimate promotes a condition called lipolysis. seem to be having a delay in the screen coming up. Okay. Promotes a situation called lipolysis. Lipolysis, what lipolysis does is lipolysis goes and causes the release of fat from the cell that was fat laden. I'll put it this way. I think I need to stop sharing my screen and reshare again because it's slowed down again. Okay, so Unamate promotes lipolysis. Unamate promotes lipolysis. What is lipolysis? Lipolysis is a fancy medical term to say fat burning. Fat burning. Okay. And what happens? Remember, in the first step of insulin resistance, you had a cell that was like this, that was fat laden, that when insulin came and knocked on the door and said, take up glucose, the cell said, what, are you kidding? Don't you think I'm plumbed full enough? And the cell no, and did not take up glucose because it was so full of fat. Because the Unamate promotes fat burning, what happens is that this cell goes from looking like this to now looking like this when there's lipolysis occurring. You have some fat burning and the fat in the cell shrinks. When the fat in the cell shrinks, you now have all this space in the cell where the cell can now take up glucose. This cell cannot give the same excuse that that cell gave, that I have no room, because even though it still has some fat, it has way more room. And as lipolysis continues to occur, that cell now returns to status quo where it has nothing in it. It has all the space in there to be able to take up glucose from the cell. So that is that. Now, when glucose is taken up from the cell, what happens is, remember we spoke about the two stages of insulin resistance, too much fat and receptor downregulation. The Unamate also promotes receptor upregulation. It puts the locks back on the keys. Why is that? When you now have lipolysis, right? When you now have lipolysis, initially before lipolysis, glucose was accumulating in the cell like that, in the blood like that, because it had nowhere to go into this cell. When lipolysis now occurs and this cell now returns to its normal, glucose in the blood, is now being able to go into the cell. When glucose gets into the cell, the concentration of glucose in the blood falls. When the concentration of glucose in the blood falls, because the stimulus for the production of insulin is glucose, insulin levels are also going to fall. When insulin levels fall, that's a humble bully, because insulin levels have fallen. The cell that had 4 receptors that had translocated, in the cell that had 4 receptors that had translocated to the cytoplasm, because insulin levels have now fallen, causes these receptors to now return to the top, to the membrane of the cytoplasm, re-establishing the status quo where you have 6 receptors doing the job of 6 receptors. That's what the Unamate does. It helps to reverse the first step as well as the second step of insulin resistance. Now, what does the fiber do? The fiber does pretty much the same thing in terms of lipolysis. The fiber helps in fat burning, and so will reverse the fat laden cell. And when the fat laden cell is reversed, the fat laden cell can take in more glucose. Taking in more glucose, causes insulin levels to be decreased equally and causes receptor upregulation. Fiber will do that too. The other thing that fiber does is that fiber decreases your glycemic index. What do I mean by that? When fiber decreases your glycemic index, it's going to cause your blood sugar, your insulin secretion to be low equally. Let's say you and I, right, went to a favorite Italian restaurant to have a plate of lasagna, and that is you. and that is me. I know a thing or two about fiber, and you don't know a thing or two about the fiber product in the Unimate, the balance. You taking, you taking, you taking your lasagna and you don't consume the fiber product yet, your blood sugar is going to do this. It's gonna go up like that to a blood spike to 180. But I know a thing or two, so I decide that I am going to take my balanced product, of the field grade system. What happens is when I take my balanced product, this is what my blood pressure does. Sorry, my blood sugar does. Why is that? My blood sugar does this and my blood sugar is 90. You and I have eaten the same plate of lasagna. Your blood sugar has gone up to 180, mine has gone up to 90. You know the reason for that? This is the reason. Fiber slows down the transit of food through the colon. Fiber, right? So let's say if food is supposed to move through the colon by this speed, fiber causes food to move through the colon by this speed. And fiber is one of those carbohydrates that is not digestible by man. And you see how it plays a role in this biosis here. But when there is a fast movement of food through the colon, then absorption occurs fast. When absorption occurs fast, then the release of glucose into the blood also occurs very fast. So you have that spike, you have this profile here. When there is a slow transit of food through the colon, absorption occurs slowly. When absorption occurs slowly, the release of glucose into the blood occurs slowly, and so you have that profile. Now, why is that important? Because if your blood sugar spikes up to 180, the pancreas is going to produce a commensurate higher amount of insulin to deal with that blood sugar of 180. So your pancreas may decide that for this for this glucose of 120, I'm gonna produce 20 units of insulin. For me, because I took the balanced product and my sugar did not spike and I only produced a 90 and my sugar only went up to 90, the pancreas is going to produce a commensurate lower amount of insulin to deal with that. And for that, the pancreas may produce 5 units of insulin. So remember, too much insulin causes receptor down regulation, and less insulin causes receptor upregulation. So you who has produced 20 units of insulin, you're going to be more prone to receptor downregulation, where the receptors on the surface of the cell are going to translocate to the cytoplasm and make you more insulin resistant. Me who has produced only 5 units, I'm going to be prone to receptor upregulation, where the receptors in my cytoplasm are going to go back to the membrane of the cell. So that is how fiber plays a huge role in insulin resistance, by decreasing your glycemic profile and by so doing guaranteeing you low circulating levels of insulin. Now, the other thing which you may not know is that insulin is an anabolic hormone. Because insulin is an anabolic hormone, the more insulin you produce, the more calories you're going to pack from that food. The more insulin you produce, the more calories you will pack from that food. So for you whose insulin levels went up to 20, you may gain 950 calories from that plate of lasagna. For me, whose insulin levels was only 5, I may only gain 350 calories from that plate of lasagna. Isn't that wild? You and I went to the same restaurant. We consumed the same amount of food. The only difference is that I consume fiber in the balanced product, and I'm leaving having paid the same amount of price. I'm leaving having gained less calories, having spiked my blood sugar less, having spiked my insulin less. That is the importance of fiber. And unfortunately, in this day and age, we do not consume enough fiber. In fact, the consumption of fiber is actually not great. It is estimated that we consume about 10 to 12 the estimated amount of fiber that we're supposed to consume. If you're a man, you're supposed to consume 38 grams of fiber a day. If you're a woman, you're supposed to consume 25 grams of fiber a day. But the NIH has put out, data that unfortunately men and women in the United States consume about 10 to 12 grams of fiber a day. So that's playing a huge role in why we have all of these issues. The other thing is that fiber is food to the microbiome. Fiber is food to the gut. Remember, we talked about the microbiome. Fiber is food to the microbiome. Why is fiber food to the microbiome? The microbiome, in the microbiome, right? All those organisms that are present in the microbiome right here, their food is fiber. And I put it this way, every wild animal in the bush, whether it's a lion in the jungle or a bacteria in your belly, requires nutrition, requires food to thrive. When you do not have fiber, then it is possible, it now sets into motion what we call survival of the fetus, where the bad bacteria, you know, now uh, conspire, proliferate to kick out the good bacteria to hoard whatever little food they have. So by giving your body fiber, you maintain the microbiome population, at healthy levels so that the good are not overtaken by the bad. The other thing that fiber does is that fiber helps to disrupt the metabolic sequence. This is what I call the metabolic sequence of disease. Fiber comes and causes this to become normal. Because when you have fiber, you're going to reduce insulin resistance. If you don't have insulin resistance, then you don't have metabolic dysfunction, oxidative stress, immune inflammation, and disease conditions. So fiber does that. So again, I want to end by saying this. We now have convincing evidence that most of the chronic medical conditions that we face today are rooted in reversible metabolic dysfunction that comes from insulin resistance and microbiome dysfunction. They cause this slide and they cause this slide. But the news is good because if you reverse the insulin resistance and the dysbiosis, those diseases that as a result of that energy deficiency goes away, just like the car that ran out of gas and you put gas in it and it went back roaring again. And the solution, the feel great system, which does that. So I will end my presentation there, and that is that. Are you guys with me? If you're with me, unmute your phone and tell me you're with me. Hello? If you're with me, Richard, could you unmute your phone and tell me you're with me? That's not good. Hey, Richard.
Yes. Yes, we were with you, brother. We were with you. We're all clapping. He was clapping. We're jumping. See us.
Okay.
Oh my God. I was saying, you are so good at what you do. When you were dropping the diagram about the fat house, the fat book, and those things, but the whole thing was very good presentation.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, on my monitor, because we supposed to be out here at 4 o'clock, it clicked off, so we couldn't see the diagram, but we could hear everything you were saying from Richard phone.
Okay, wonderful. I will send that video recording to you guys.
That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great presentation, and it was very educational. And the way you explain things, it looks so simple. Yeah, I mean, so I'll just ask a few quick questions.
Please.
Okay, number one, where does white blood cell play into this? If somebody has less white, does it anything to do with the gut and food consumed?
Not necessarily. I say that because there is a condition called ethnic neutropenia. Okay, what is ethnic neutropenia? Ethnic neutropenia is a condition where people of dark skin, African Americans, black, have a low white blood cell. I have a low white blood cell. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me at all. It's a
And today, when they go to the lab and they get my blood, the doctor starts screaming, "Oh, you have low, you are less immune. You have less white blood."
That's not true. It's inconsequential. My white blood cell count is like 2 point something, and it doesn't bother me. It's well known, it's well documented. It's called ethnic neutropenia. Where people of black descent have a low white blood cell. It has no consequence.
And all of that, and the acids. Then I was thinking, where does the white blood cell now fall? Okay, then now on. I got a question too. Yeah. Okay. What's that? Yeah. So for me, you really explained about the gut health. I'm a little. I guess I'm a little fat around the edges, but when I use the bathroom sometimes, my urine smells sweet, you could smell the orange juice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what that's due to?
That may be due to a lot of glucose in your urine. Yeah. That may be due to glucose leaking out in your urine. Are you diabetic or pre-diabetic?
I was pre-diabetic a couple of years ago.
Okay. When was the last time you checked your A1C or your blood sugars?
At least about 14 months.
Yeah. It's very possible that you could be spilling glucose into your blood, because you may have progressive pre-diabetes or probably even transitioning into diabetes. It's good for you to have that checked.
Yeah, okay, I definitely. Yeah, because when you start the way you explain how the glucose was trying to get into the fat cells, that was really good. And I know gut health is important.
Yes, gut health is important, critical.
And the bloating of the stomach, what causes that? And because as I realized once upon a time when I traveled, I thought that I ate a lot I ate too much than I should have eaten in Cameroon also.
Mm-hmm.
And I really felt, I came back, I gained about 10 pounds or more.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that after my meals are gone, my tummy was going to go away.
Yeah.
So, until the endocrinologist told me that if I don't take the diabetic insulin that she gave me, that stomach will keep on bloating.
The bloating of the stomach is as a result of lack of energy. You see, you have we have smooth muscles in our stomach that have to contract and relax for things to be able to move through well. For a muscle to contract and relax, it requires energy. When it doesn't have sufficient energy because of metabolic dysfunction, it it doesn't contract and relax well, and so things do not move. When things do not move, there is congestion in the stomach, and that congestion results in the bloating feeling. Yeah.
So now the insulin I've been taking now, so it has been,
How long have you been on insulin?
it's almost, it's getting to 1 month. I have one more pin to finish it.
Yeah, we need to get you off insulin. Did your product come yet?
Yes, but product came, but my wife is consuming it. She's rushed to eat. She's
Okay.
consuming. She started today.
Okay, have you started yours? You should start also. Yeah, my goal is to get you off insulin, and I'm going to help you do that.
Yeah, no, I'm really prepared. I get prepared to do the exercise.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so coming to the other side of business.
Yeah, do you want to get back on your platform or what, or your lost energy?
I think we can postpone this if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind.
Yes, I think we can postpone it. It's been a very challenging because we had so many challenges here.
Yeah.
Yes, and the time that we're supposed to use the studio is up. So we can. What is your today's show?
Yeah.
What's your Thursday like?
When is Thursday? Not great, not great. It's packed. I was telling Tessa, I'll just be honest with you. I was telling Tessa that it would be great for you to sign up before the 10th of the month, like on or before the 10th. Why is that? Because if you sign up on or before the 10th of the month, it's gonna help Tessa to qualify for a special training in Las Vegas. So I was hoping that if you were gonna be able to tomorrow is the 10th.
Yeah, I agree that, but this conditioning is not what I was aware about.
Yeah, no, it's not your issue at all. I just, it's not your issue at all. I assumed that things were going to go smoothly, and I was just telling Tessa, hey Tessa, once your uncle signs, you qualify for this because you have a deadline. I just telling her you need to sign one person before the 10th and you qualify for a special training in Las Vegas. So um there was no need to tell you because things were going smoothly.
Yeah, things are going smoothly. We have to move this training for today.
Yeah.
And the 10th is tomorrow.
Yeah. What we can do, right? What we can do, because you don't need to have me on the line or what have you. I can send you a link with Tessa's distribution link. All you need to do on the comfort of your phone or even a laptop, you can just follow that and use that and sign up on the Tessa. Very easy. See, it's seamless.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Problem. I'll call her if she has to walk me through. That's not a problem.
Yeah. It's very easy, and I can walk you through too if you want that. I can walk you through too, because I know that Tessa is very busy. So I told her that because I have a little bit more free time than I am. I'm doing this full time now. Yeah, I'm doing this full time. I don't know if I sent you my website. Did I send you my website?
Send me the link. If you don't send me the website, I have so many caps I wear at the same time on a day. So
yeah.
Send me this, I didn't say it.
Yeah, let me see. So I'm doing this full time now. I'm planning to start my own virtual functional medicine clinic to help people to be able. Yeah. y- Yeah, I can, yeah, I can use your platform for sure. I'm looking to, I'll be interested. I feel like you could help me in starting a podcast or what have you, and things like that. So I just sent you my website. That's my website. So I'm doing this full time now, from home and all of that. So I have more time than Tessa does. So I can help you, Mr. Richard, to be able to get that done, so that you don't bother Tessa.
Mhm. You should be bothered to get the money.
I like that. I like that. That's an uncle can bother a niece, right?
The client who has many questions directly.
Exactly.
That's really great.
Exactly. Let's see. Let me try to pull up Tessa's stuff right now. Yeah, and the other thing that I want us to do, right? I really want us, what I want us in the very near future, to try to have a meeting with the higher ups in the company, because your platform is going to give us a lot of leverage, to be able to say, hey, we want to negotiate the price for Africa. So I don't know how that will look like, but I'm thinking that you and I, should have a meeting, just you and I, and then we kind of strategize as to, hey, this is what we should present to the company in terms of leverage and what have you. What are your thoughts to that?
When you send me your website or your company website, I can be able to extrapolate some data which I can be able to know how to structure um, um, the synchronization, or the using of your putting your product into the system and
Okay.
into the market. So you can sign up as an individual with your individual company,
Okay.
or the mother company can also come in as a partner. But then I will not want the company to limit to limit uh, to limit us. To limit us in the sense that we cannot crisscross. Our strategy is to have any product in the 55 countries in Africa, or wherever Africans exist,
Yeah.
wherever Africans are, for starting from Washington, D.C.,
Mm-hmm.
the United States. And so I wanted to know, you said in which African countries you are now?
Right now, unfortunately, not in many. Just in right now, just in South Africa and Morocco. Used to be in Kenya, but it's kind of iffy.
What happened?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
Do you have any idea about the price?
The price of the product?
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's 100. Yeah, it's $159 a month for a subscription and 169 for a one-time buy, which lasts 30 days. So I think that what I really think, right, is that we should think about negotiating the price for Africa to go down to, it's gonna be higher. It's gonna be lower.
But they have you can scale it in terms of numbers.
Exactly.
Disease.
Exactly. Yeah, so
Somebody, I don't care your level, whether you're upper class in Africa, to pay this product is impossible.
yeah.
I like to be sure of a market.
Yeah, yeah. So what I really need from you is that you could sit down and you look at what it is and maybe draft a proposal, and we decided, okay, we're going to have a meeting with we'd hire up and tell higher up, hey, this is what we have, this is the platform. We feel a solid presentation. We feel that with this platform, we can be the ones to help you expedite and open up the African market instantly. And with that, we will need a lower price.
And then also want to know, want to know their pain points so far. What has been their pain point? Why are they not in Africa?
Yeah.
Or why are they not expanding fast in Africa?
Yeah.
Has a prevalent, has a very high population of diabetes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And most of our food, of course, most African food are starch-based, carbohydrate-based. That's something. But we have access to a lot of fiber too. We have a lot of fiber that you can, or fiber-based, what people call nutrition.
Yeah.
Which you can educate the population to consume. That's right. And okay, then besides that product, what other thing? You guys do nothing else. Right?
Oh no, they have a lot of products. I kid you not. They have a lot. I can send you. They have a product that helps to build muscle for patients who for people who are unable to build muscle. They have a product for that.
I need that product.
Okay, that product is called Stronghold. They have a product for that to help build muscle enrollment. Yep, they have. I can send you. Great. Okay. Let me send you what I'm sending you right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What I'm sending you right now is Texas.
So if my wife has signed up on that TESA,
Mm-hmm.
can both of us be on the same account?
Yes, you could. So your wife can sign on if somebody could sign on the TESA, and then the other person can still sign on the TESA, or the other person can sign under the spouse.
Okay.
It will make it will benefit you more if, let's say, you're talking about signing as a partner, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it will benefit you more if, let's say, your wife signs and then you sign under her, or you sign and then your wife signs under her, rather than the two of them going on the TESA. TESA is still going to benefit, but it's going to benefit you more if it's split like that.
Okay. Yeah. So okay. Let me go and tell patient, because we were discussing about that last night. So let me go call that tell patient and talk with patients. Slightly after dinner, I will call you.
Okay, sounds good. The link, I sent you a link to TESA's enrollment. So call me after dinner and I'll help you walk through the stuff.
Okay, all right.
All right, thank you. And then after that, we really need to sit, and map. I really want us to have a solid presentation, before we sit down with the higher ups in the company. Because I think, brother, you have some huge leverage here with what is going on.
Okay. When you send me your company website and all of that.
Okay. I'm sending you my personal company website, and then I'm sending you the Unicity website where they have all the products. Okay. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
See you soon. I'll talk to you this evening.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Simi, you can come in now.